Welcome to the Berlin-Boylston Regional School District Candidates Forum. 2022 marks the first election for our newly formed Regional School District Committee. My name is Dawn Porter, and I'm the clerk for the town of Boylston. This program is being produced by WBAC, Boylston's public access television station. Participation in this forum was voluntary, and all candidates were given the opportunity to participate. Additionally, candidates were given the option of recording their segments in the WBAC studio or submitting their own videos. Candidates were given the same 7 questions to answer, as well as a request for introduction and conclusion statements. All questions and statements have a strict time limit. With that being said, let's get started.
Hi, my name is Michael Tobin, and I'm running for the 4-year school committee seat from Berlin. My wife and I chose to raise our family in Berlin because of the wide open spaces and quality of the schools, as I'm sure many of you did. Like all of you, I'm passionate when it comes to my children, and I want them to succeed. As a member of the school committee, I'm trusted to make decisions in the best interest of all students, and it's a position I take serious. We may not all agree on all decisions, but over the past 2 years, I've fought to ensure the committee helps the administration make the best choices for our students, given the circumstances. Sometimes my passion can get the best of me, and yes, I've used some choice words at meetings before. And I was angry. I was angry people stole 2 years from our kids. I was angry they had no plan to move forward. And I was angry they were wasting taxpayer dollars. I'm not going to candy coat anything just because you want to hear it said softly. I'll say what I mean and mean what I say, and I will do what I say. I won't be a different person in meetings than I am in the community or in life. I'm as honest and transparent as you see. My style may upset some people, but with everything at stake, it's only right that we cut to the chase and get down to the business of recovering from the immense learning loss experienced due to the failed response to the pandemic in schools. I plan to do just that every day, and you can count on me to fight as hard for your child's future learning as I would my own. I'll protect your rights as a parent to have a say in your family's healthcare choices in school and make sure you know exactly what's happening in the schools. I'll fight to make sure all students are included and given the opportunity to succeed, not because of some woke buzzwords like equity, but because it's the right thing to do. I'll fight to make sure we have a fair but efficient budget that accomplishes our goals without wasting taxpayer money on unnecessary items just to make sure we spend at some arbitrary level. In short, I'll fight for you and for our students.
My name is Jessica Moore Degli Alberti. I'm the only person running against any appointed incumbent member of the school committee. Boylston is my home, and Berlin is my husband's hometown. I'm an alum of BES, he of BMS, and we both of Tohoto. I graduated cum laude from Case Western Reserve University in medical anthropology, evolutionary biology, and a minor in chemistry. I spent a year as a paraprofessional at BES for the 4th grade and gained an appreciation of what teachers do every day. I then passed the community and literacy skills and biology MTEL to be certified to teach. I taught math and science classes at the Corin Russell School, where every student was on an IEP. I then followed my passion and earned my RN license, worked at Marlborough Hospital for 3 years, and then earned my family nurse practitioner board certification. This August marked my 10th year as PCP for my patients at the Kennedy Community Health Center in Great Brook Valley. I was thrilled when my husband and I could move our family back to Boylston in 2019, and my daughter could start 1st grade at BES. I jumped right into town life with co-coaching soccer for my kids and volunteering in town. 6 months later, the pandemic threw a major wrench in all of our lives. I started attending school committee meetings on Zoom in the spring of 2020. Most will know me from my public comments, which have been data-driven during the height of the pandemic. As a nurse, I advocated for policies to keep kids in school, learning with their peers. During these meetings, I have witnessed intolerance to different views, profanity, teachers' efforts insulted, and antagonizing comments made towards the superintendent. I've seen decisions, policies, and amendments be made without consulting the stakeholders from the schools nor the community. I have seen the shock of the community when the last remaining elected school committee member with a PhD in education quit because of intra-committee bullying in February 2022. The voices of a few have drowned out the respectful voices of the others. Staff retention and learning deficits are my top priorities. We have lost many caring staff members this year, and some of it can be attributed to some of the toxicity within our district. The pandemic stress and personal life paths have influenced some staff departures, but this is not normal, as claimed during a recent school committee meeting. The kids need stability to be able to make up the learning deficits that have occurred over the last 2.5 years. Transparency is also a priority. More is needed in the committee's agendas and during the meetings, especially surrounding the policies being created and voted upon by the committee. My goal is to create more community dialogue for exchange of ideas during the meetings. My hope is to listen to the parents, teachers, staff, and students so they can focus on teaching and learning. There are many more topics that need addressing in our district: the mental health of our students, the deficits in their knowledge after remote learning and continued absences during COVID-19 surges within our schools, and maintaining safe physical spaces in our schools so the students can focus on learning. I believe we need a different perspective to create a healthy school committee. I ask your support in electing me, Jessica Moore, Degli-Alberti.
My name is Adam Wilbur, and I'm a current member of the Berlin-Boylston Regional School District's School Committee, having been appointed in September of 2021. I'm not an original resident of Boylston. I grew up in Taunton, Massachusetts, but I've lived in Massachusetts my entire life, and I'm the product of a public school education. My wife and I moved to Boylston in 2019, along with our children, Henry, who's currently 6 and in Mrs. Gaucher's first grade class, and Ruth, who just turned 5 and will be joining him in kindergarten at Boylston Elementary next year. For my opening statement, I decided to simply read the statement I gave to the school committee in September of 2021 when I was appointed to the position I currently hold. My agenda is to do whatever I can to continuously improve the quality and the relevance of the education our schools provide to students. The only constant is change, and we must prepare students for the change they're going to face over the next 5 or 10 years. My agenda is also to ensure that we are educating the whole student, physically, mentally, and academically. I'll be a passionate supporter for STEM education and integrating it wherever we can, as well as the arts. A friend of mine posed a question on Facebook where they asked us to recall who our favorite teacher was. I looked back through that list of teachers whose names I remembered and nodded in agreement with several of them. However, when I added my own comment, I was the first person to mention our high school band instructor as the most influential teacher I had had. Even though it's been 20 years since I picked up a saxophone, I look back now and I realize that I probably learned more lessons in that class of band than I did in AP Chemistry, AP Physics, or other courses I had as a student in high school. Without that enrichment, that extracurricular activity, whether it be the band or other student organizations, I wouldn't be where I am today, and I will be a passionate advocate for us fully funding the arts, athletics, and extracurricular activities, especially at Tohoto, where we need to create an environment that makes students want to stay at that school. In my letter of interest, I give a few reasons as to why I'm a qualified candidate, and I'll end my statement with those. First, I'm qualified because I'm a parent of a child in this district, and I'll soon be a parent of 2 children in this district. Number 2, I'm qualified because I'm a product of a Massachusetts public school education. I graduated from Taunton High School, and my mother was a second grade public school teacher for over 30 years. I grew up in a household that valued the public education we have here in Massachusetts. I look forward to continuing to support that in our district. And number 3, I'm qualified because I understand what the role of the school committee is and what it is not. We are empowered to appoint a superintendent and to provide him or her with the resources they need to be successful and to help students learn. And I look forward to continuing to do that for the next 4 years.
Hello, my name is Lorianne Hart, and I am the current chair of the Berlin-Boylston School Committee. I grew up in Westminster, Massachusetts, graduating with honors from Oakmont Regional High School. I graduated summa cum laude from the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth, and upon graduation began my first year of teaching in Berlin Memorial School, covering a 1-year maternity leave. The following year, I was hired by the Westford Public School District, chosen as one of 11 teachers out of a pool of over 1,000. During my time in that district, I looped from the 3rd to 4th grade, taught 5th grade for a year, ultimately settling in grade 4. My last day of teaching was 4 days before my daughter was born. I was fortunate enough to be able to stay at home with my children during their early childhood years and cherished the opportunity. My husband, a real estate attorney, realized I needed something more in my life as I'd always been very active. He suggested real estate, which was the perfect fit for a busy mom who needed a flexible schedule. I just celebrated my 10th anniversary as a realtor and have the honor and privilege of working for and with one of my closest friends, Cindy McKenzie. Our office, Walsh & Associates, is located on Main Street in Boylston, and we often sponsor and give back to the schools whenever we are able, as we love this town. I have a senior at Tohoto and a son at the middle school at St. John's. This placement has understandably been questioned on a Facebook forum, and despite how painful and embarrassing this public admission is for my 14-year-old son, I'm going to end my introduction with part of my response. During COVID-induced remote portions of school at Tohoto, one child of mine thrived, the other drowned. I cannot put into words how tortured every day was in our home, the toll this took on our entire family. If you've been there, you know, and it's an awful reality. We invested in tutoring and counseling, and I stopped working in order to focus on saving my youngest education. He ended the year with barely passing grades, good enough for the state of Massachusetts to progress a student, not nearly good enough to have any kind of success in the next grade or life itself. When you are building a house, you don't skip a layer of the foundation. We knew we had to do what was right and made the difficult decision to regrade our son. Out of consideration for his mental health and pride, we could not do so in the same school. No one deserves to stay behind while their peers advance. So yes, my son attends the 8th grade at St. John's, while his peers are in grade 9 at Tohoto. This was not his decision to leave, and he paid a price for leaving his tribe via social media and electronic bullying from both acquaintances and, most heartbreakingly, some friends. This whole experience has affected me and is one of the many reasons I decided to run for election. My priorities for running will be explained in an answer to another question, but they are related to this experience, as I never want others to endure this.
I made the decision to draw my papers after BES's amazing principal announced his resignation. Numerous staff resigned, including teachers, paraprofessionals, and 5 school nurses in one academic year. The pandemic stress and personal life paths have influenced some departures, but it's not normal. If we want staff to stay, we need to include their input in district decisions that impact their day-to-day lives. So much anxiety was created this year when kids didn't know their principal or even their teacher. Changes in staffing impact students' ability to learn and their mental health. Emotional wellness is so important to students and staff, and we need to make sure the school environment and curriculum include ways for children to express their emotions and retains our staff. After watching the last 2.5 years, I cannot continue to make public comments and silently listen to misinformation with no opportunity for clarification or community input. The intolerance of differing opinions and lack of transparency cannot continue. Parents and community members deserve to know what policies and topics are going to be discussed at upcoming meetings, and it needs to be included with the agenda.
What motivates me to be on the Berlin-Boylston School Committee is my background in education and direct knowledge of the school's needs. I am not here with an agenda, and both my actions and votes have shown my intent to do right by the children and their academic future. At a time where school committees across the nation have gone viral for putting forth policies their communities and parents don't support, I see the value in being level-headed and remembering that I am a representative of those who elected me. I have lived in both Boylston and Berlin, having taught in the latter of the two. I recognize that while we are one district, we are 2 very different towns who deserve equal representation. Despite our refreshing differences, we have one common goal: to give our children the best education we can and to be sure that the policies don't hinder our growth. However, our district is at a critical point. We've had a lot of turnover, especially in administration, and we have the opportunity to transform ourselves. This is why I joined the school committee in February of 2020. I want to be a part of making our district great.
We were asked to respond to a question of what motivates us to serve on the school committee, and for me that question is a really easy one to answer. I'm motivated by seeing my own children as well as their friends and classmates receive the best education they can in the Berlin-Boylston School District, and I believe that I'm uniquely suited to help ensure that as a member of the school committee. My last year of experience having served on this committee, as well as paying very close attention to all of the work the committee did for the years prior to that, has prepared me to continue serving for the next 4 years, and I look forward to the opportunity to do so to ensure that your children and mine can have a phenomenal experience, whether at Berlin Memorial, Boylston Elementary, or Tohoto.
I was motivated to serve after experiencing the disaster that was remote school in fall of 2020. The teachers did the best they could, but it's not their fault. The idea of trying to teach a 5-year-old to read via computer screen or from behind a mask is clearly not workable, and now we have the local and national data that proves it. What pushed me over the edge to join was when I learned there wasn't even a plan to return to school full-time. Nobody had thought that far ahead. Now we have to deal with the setbacks in learning that this has brought. Jessica, who is a candidate in Boylston, as recently as June of this year, has called on the school committee to reinstate required masks in situations and has gone as far as to blame the school committee for her child getting COVID, which caused her to miss out on some anticipated activities this past spring. It's unfortunate for any child to have to miss out, and I think about the entire Tohoto classes of 2020, 21, and 22 that missed out on many highly anticipated life milestones due to the pandemic response. As long as I'm on the committee, I'll fight to make sure this doesn't happen again. And I look forward to working with the administration to recover from all this learning loss.
I was appointed in February 2020, one of 4 candidates who vied for the position. Prior to appointment, 3 members of the 2019 committee reached out to me regarding the vacancy, asking me to serve. There was little to no interest in the position at first, and these members knew I had been a very active volunteer in the schools, having served as Boylston PTO treasurer for 3 years, as well as having been invited to serve on many district-level committees where we'd worked together. They had liked working with me, so their support and enthusiastic encouragement is what gave me the courage to apply. I have served on boards prior to the school committee. I am honored to have been one of the select few invited by Mrs. Patty Inwood, grade 4 teacher at BES, to be a founder, board member, and active part of the grief nonprofit Hope Lives Here that she began after the loss of her oldest son, Luke. I served on the HLH board for many years, helped acquire and fill our space in Holden, ran and assisted grief meetings, and was our social media writer from November of 2018 until March of 2020. I would still be an active part of that demanding but worthwhile board were it not for my appointment to the school committee. I am also honored to be a board member of the Matthew John Phillips Scholarship Foundation. Lastly, I am a former teacher. I have been in the trenches and I know the realities both educators and students face. I was recently told by a veteran Berlin teacher that the teachers at Berlin Memorial have appreciated my steady leadership, my willingness to listen to all sides, and to fight for what is right. I have gotten emails and messages of support from my former Berlin Memorial 3rd grade students, now parents themselves with students in the district, thanking me for my decisions, my service, and assuring me that I have their vote.
What experiences do I have that have prepared me to serve on the school committee? I've got to start first and foremost with the experience I've gained in my last year plus on the school committee. I'll be honest, the learning curve is pretty steep. There's a lot to learn and understand about what the role of the committee is and how we can most effectively serve the students, parents, teachers, and everyone who's part of this community and cares to see really strong public schools provided to all of our students here in Berlin and Boylston. I also serve on several other boards. I was as a student at WPI, where I received my bachelor's degree in biochemistry. I served as student body president, and in that role also sat on the board of trustees for WPI. I worked in higher education for 5 years of my career at the University of Connecticut and the University of Hartford, and I also currently serve on and assist several nonprofit boards through my business. I understand the role of a board member as opposed to the role of others in the organization and the important governance role we have to fill without ever overstepping towards or over things that really aren't in our purview. So I think for me it's a combination of the experience I've gained in the last year on this school committee as well as other things in my own professional and personal background that have prepared me to be an effective member of the school committee.
I've been serving on the committee since December 2020. In that time, I've been involved in many positive activities, most recently working to negotiate a new contract with the teachers that delivers an appropriate raise for them, as well as provides for additional interactions between teachers and parents, a crucial relationship we need to build upon if we're to repair the damage done to learning over the past 2 years. Serving on the policy as well as the student success and technology subcommittees has allowed me to build a deeper relationship with both the current superintendent and our incoming superintendent. I've worked closely with them to improve district policies, rewrite outdated and questionable policies, make necessary changes quickly as the environment changed, and learn just exactly what our district needs to improve going forward. Working with Carol Costello on the district improvement plan has allowed me to dive deep into the work we need to do to improve our district. My experience in business has also taught me to make quick, informed decisions and to adjust as necessary as we go along, and not stick with the same failing plans when new data arrives that makes old decisions obsolete. Too often the pace of change is too slow in local government and our schools, which is a detriment to our students. We need to constantly monitor progress, and using data, if we see something isn't working, we need to empower our administration to make the necessary changes rather than continue wasting taxpayer money on failing processes.
I am an independent voter en masse because politics polarize people. It doesn't matter what political party you identify with. I want to know your opinion and respectfully discuss it. I was a member of the Superintendent Parent Advisory Board last academic year and have had many respectful communications with the present and future superintendent, so I already have a working relationship with both. I have lived the life as a paraprofessional at BES, had to work a second job to make ends meet, and I have the support of several retired BES and Tohoto teachers. I worked for a year as a teacher in an independent school where every student had an IEP, so I had an appreciation for the time put into testing and the writing of the IEP and the resources to put the IEP into action. I have seen the positive effects an IEP can have on a child's academic life, but also their mental health. Our children have fallen behind, and focused help early on can prevent depression or hatred of school even. IEP should not be something one has to fight for if their child is struggling. I worked at a school-based health center at Worcester Tech High School for 3 years as well and saw the inner workings of a high school nurse's office. I helped students and patients manage their depression on a daily basis. I substituted at BES when the school nurses in October 21 all quit in protest. My undergraduate and graduate education, along with travel to other countries, has allowed me to gain a perspective to analyze data and view others' opinions and have a respectful debate. My scientific education and medical background allows me a perspective we do not have on the school committee presently. I stay up to date on the data and will continue to share this regardless of if I get elected. And lastly, I have the perspective not only as a mother to a kindergarten and a fourth grader at BES, but also that of a student of BES in Tohoto. I have seen the lessons of some of the amazing teachers that are still in our school district and know the huge loss to our students if they were to leave.
We have to focus on the ELA or English and Language Arts, the reading skills of our elementary school students. We're certainly seeing that across several different testing methodologies as being a gap right now, much of which is likely due to the learning loss that occurred due to COVID-19 and the attempts we made to mitigate that disease. I'll also point to the priorities I've published on our campaign website at votehartwilbur.com, really around budget in ensuring that we are funding our schools at an appropriate level. I look at a benchmark of the median across all cities and towns in Massachusetts to ensure we're able to hire and retain great teachers and principals. I was a big supporter of the recent contract we just signed with the teachers union and the raise that we provided them within that. I think we can continue to do more to ensure our teachers and principals are paid competitively with neighboring districts. We also need to look at the facilities, both in Berlin and Boylston. Both of our elementary schools are getting close to being, dare I say, overcrowded. At Berlin Memorial, we don't have space for even one additional classroom in that building, and unless we're able to, or the towns are able to control the continued growth and housing development in both towns, we're going to need to look at physical facilities and what we can do to keep our class sizes small, which is just critically important, especially in those younger years. And the third thing for me is I'd like to see the district conduct some more regular school climate surveys. I want to understand as a member of the committee what the opinions are of teachers and parents in a consistent, regular fashion. You know, the superintendent reports directly to the committee, but we need to be able to see and get some of that feedback from the ground up so we can understand what's really going on and what's really needed to help improve learning outcomes for our students.
I will always advocate for more transparency in the committee's agendas and meetings. We need to make sure all discussion of these policies are heard in the open meeting and not happening in emails or behind closed doors. I asked the committee to include hyperlinks to documents and policies in the agenda before the meeting occurred, and I'm happy to see Hart's research to address this deficit. In the September 30th newsletter, Cara Costello reported mixed MCAS scores, but also quoted the Massachusetts Commissioner of Education, Jeff Riley, that there were record-breaking levels of absenteeism in the state's public schools last year, with nearly 1/3 of all students missing 18 or more days of school. The district COVID dashboard has to be maintained so parents can seek out the data so they can make the educated decision to mask their own child, test when they wouldn't have, and to skip the visit with high-risk grandma. I also plan to pursue getting home and hospital tutoring for every student that has to be out for an extended period of time so they will not fall further behind. Data shows masks and vaccines protect us, but I have no desire nor intention of pursuing a mask or vaccine mandate. We need to make sure the assessment tests are independently validated to make sure the time spent on screens and testing is not at the cost of more time on learning. Staff retention is another priority. The committee has to seek their opinions on policies that affect them. We need to give paraprofessionals a living wage. I worked as one at BES and had to have an after-school job. Having qualified, happy staff is so important to our children's education. Maintaining the arts and extracurriculars within our district is vital to the mental health of our students. Music, chorus, band, art, theater club, gym, and recess, to name a few. Supporting the development of more clubs and financially supporting their advisors is so important to giving all the kids the opportunity to feel like they belong. We need to look into creating more opportunities within Tohoto to retain our students. Sadly, shop class and home ec were eliminated, but both allowed students to gain life skills in which a career path could be illuminated. Financial literacy is also an important skill that should be included at all levels, not just the high school. I will support efforts to seek a long-term maintenance plan for physical spaces within the district as well.
I have 3 priorities in mind for my term on the school committee, which you can read about in full at www.votehartwilbur.com. The first is to ensure smooth transitions in the central office and for principals. I joined my school committee colleagues in our unanimous decision to appoint longtime administrator Carol Costello as the next superintendent. I am incredibly confident in her ability to lead our district. Longtime principals have departed for retirement and for opportunities in other districts. We need to attract and retain outstanding principals because they create the culture in which outstanding teachers want to work. My second priority is to reverse COVID-induced learning loss. COVID-19 and our society's attempts to mitigate it failed our children. We must invest in reversing the learning loss and emotional distress caused by remote schooling and other actions that prevented students from learning normally. And we must never allow for any of it to happen again. During the pandemic, I fought for parents' rights to determine what was best for their children, and I will never waver in doing so. My third priority is to transform the middle school and high school experience at Tohoto. The number of students who leave Tohoto is unacceptable, especially from 8th to 9th grade. We must provide an academic, extracurricular, and athletic climate that is compelling for our students and prepares them to enter the workforce or to go to college. Creating a distinct middle school experience is critical because a positive middle school experience where roots grow will entice more students to stay. We need to budget for an additional administrator at Tohoto specifically responsible for grades 6 through 8.
Carrying out and monitoring a new district improvement plan that will attempt to correct the recent learning loss will be a primary focus in the coming years. We'll support the teachers while they do the work to help our students come up to the appropriate grade levels with their reading skills, which have dropped drastically since we closed schools and implemented other measures that contributed to this failure. The school committee asked for and received several changes in the way teachers interact with parents. We'll monitor this closely to see how things work over the next 3 years and make adjustments if necessary, as the members elected to the 4-year seats will be involved with the next negotiation between the committee and the teachers union. Unfortunately, Jessica, who is running in Boylston, would still see us continue these failed policies. Earlier this year, she wrote to the committee and asked us to keep schools closed after break, but doing so would have only served to set learning back even further. We need schools open, we need students in the classroom, and we need common sense sick time policies that would allow students and staff to take the time they need without impacting the rest of the school district, not closing schools. Another key accomplishment I'd be working on with both towns is their master plans. Any additional building that takes place in town is going to directly impact the schools as populations grow. I recently reached out to the town of Berlin and the planning board as they asked for feedback on their future housing development plans. Towns need to manage growth between a need for more housing and its use of resources. But our elementary school in Berlin, while relatively new, is small. We cherish small class sizes, but if we make a change in residential building decisions, we must consider how that's going to impact the future population and growth in our schools. We may be having a discussion about a new school building sooner than you might think, and I hope to be part of that work between the towns and schools. So thanks for this question, but it seems this one would be more appropriate for us to ask of you, the community. What do you think? Let me know. But do I believe we currently freely debate divergent ideas? Absolutely. The only place ideas can be discussed and decided on by the school committee is at a public meeting. I will say that prior to Susan Henry abruptly quitting as chair in February, it was difficult to feel accepted as a member of the committee and to even have a divergent idea without being shut down. There were a lot of behind-the-scenes discussions where she would attempt to solve problems prior to meetings. Since March, when the new chair took over, it's been a much less contentious experience. The community has been asked for its input multiple times on important issues since then, such as masking and the COVID response, hiring a new superintendent, and school performance issues. We've welcomed that feedback and discussed it in public, whether it was agreeable or not. We've listened, and while we may not have agreed or voted the way some would want, we did not dismiss the community or attempt to turn off their mic, as was the thinking and direction of the previous chair before she quit.
The current school committee freely considers debates of divergent ideas in public during school committee meetings so that the public sees how various issues influence its collective decisions. We abide by open meeting law, which means our deliberations must happen on the floor at a meeting. When a new or amended policy is proposed, we almost always do a first read at one meeting, followed by a vote at the next one. This gives a minimum of 1 week timeline for the public to review what's being proposed, weigh in via email or public comment before the members vote. In rare instances where a small change is made in a policy, we may have a first read and vote at a meeting, but we try our best to avoid doing so as to provide transparency. A policy can always be amended after a vote if warranted, so the vote is never the final word. Another example of this is the appointment of Ms. Carol Costello. The school committee has the right to simply appoint a superintendent without input from the community. The current board appreciates the community input, so we developed a survey to determine what issues were important to stakeholders. We used that survey to interview Ms. Costello, and rather than appoint her after the interview, we delayed the vote until the following meeting in order to allow community feedback. While there were a handful of people who thought we should do a costly large-scale search, the support for Ms. Costello was overwhelming. Additionally, within minutes of the conclusion of our unanimous vote, where members had been allowed to share their reasons of support for appointment, I received 2 emails from people who had previously spoken out against the appointment, stating that once they knew the teachers were in favor of our choice, they changed their minds. One of those people had made a public statement at the beginning of the meeting advocating for the full search, and I respect her for sharing that she changed her mind.
Over the last 2.5 years, I have not seen much debating. Opposing ideas are dismissed. Addendums policies have been voted upon without explanation or conversation before the vote. Agenda items were listed with abbreviations with no clue to what the content involved and then voted upon with no reading of the documents. How can one make a public comment on something they know nothing about? The open meeting law, according to mass.gov, encourages government transparency. It advises to avoid texting and emailing outside spoken public meeting because, quote, communications between a quorum of a public body must occur during a noticed meeting. The agenda is supposed to have a listing of topics that, quote, must contain enough specificity to give the public an understanding of each topic that will be discussed. Policies have not involved input from staff nor community stakeholders, such as a vote to end the mask mandate. A letter from the school nurses was submitted and ignored in February 2022. The hiring of the new superintendent didn't involve a panel of staff, nor parents, nor community members this fall 2022. Explanations after the vote included saving time and money and ensuring a smooth transition, but our current superintendent wasn't resigning until June of 2023. One would think there was time to put a community and staff committee together, at least to interview Carol Costello. Thankfully, I've spoken with current staff who respects and appreciate Carol Costello's efforts. My interactions with her have always been respectful and thoughtful. During the March 9, 2021 meeting, a Berlin member of the committee swore while addressing the superintendent, insulted teachers' remote teaching efforts. He also said during that meeting, "Glad we're not hung up on the science." During the August 29, 2021 meeting, 6 Boylston residents were interviewed for the 2 empty seats on the committee. Each remaining member of the committee was allowed to ask their own questions. The process was nauseating. Each question asked was very clearly weeding out candidates who held different views than their own. It was even suggested by one member that having the background of being a teacher was a liability. Which brings me to my final example. January 31st, 2021, Dr. Susan Henry, holding a PhD in education and 40 years of experience, and the last elected school committee member, resigned because of, and I quote, abusive and threatening behavior. The 2 committee members primarily responsible for this behavior actually had the audacity to recently say there was a pre- and post-February 2022 school committee, and post-February 2022, they were able to get so much more done. The open meeting law, committee protocols, and respect are vital to the functioning of the school committee and shouldn't be ignored.
We were asked to respond to a question here that I'm just going to take a moment to read to make sure I accurately reflect it. Do we believe that the current school committee freely considers and debates divergent ideas in public during school committee meetings so that the public sees how various issues influence our collective decisions? This to me is 100% yes. I've been involved in this committee for just over a year. We've had any number of public discussions about any number of topics, whether those be controversial or not. Every time we have those meetings, we have those conversations, we do so in a public meeting. We also have several subcommittees that meet publicly. Many of those subcommittee meetings are recorded by WBAC and then provided for viewing later for anyone who wants to watch them. I myself chair the budget subcommittee, where we meet almost every other week right now as we're preparing for budget season, and those meetings are often recorded and available for anyone to watch and understand how we deliberate within even that subcommittee. I'll also say we've made a lot of efforts over just the last couple of months even to become more transparent and to do a better job of communicating with the community. I've seen us make an attempt via social media through the creation of a school committee Facebook page, which has almost 300 followers today, as well as being actively involved in other digital and in-person events where people are always willing and able to come and speak with us and understand our thinking and talk with us about the issues that the school committee is asked to weigh in on and decide. So to this one, any insinuation otherwise is absurd. I've been involved for, like I said, just over a year, and we've been very public with all of our deliberations.
After watching a year's worth of school committee meetings, I was shocked at the offensive language used in the meeting of March 9, 2021. I didn't know what to do, as the meeting was on Zoom and no avenue to interact with the committee at the time. I wrote an email inquiring how to call for the resignation of a member that was so blatantly disrespectful during the meeting. I wrote the email to the then chair of the committee and the committee secretary, believing that it would be forwarded to the whole committee. It was not. The then chair replied that there was no protocol for this and I'd have to take it public. I didn't feel that that was an appropriate path to take. The email was shared with a member and he reached out to me to discuss our differences. I declined at the time as work and my daughter's remote learning was consuming all of my mental energy. Perhaps if we were able, we would have come to a better understanding. As public servants, we are accountable to those we serve. The public deserves decorum and respectful dialogue and discussion during meetings. Differing opinions are bound to occur between members and also between the committee and the public. In addition to adding more transparency to the agenda and providing documents to the public before the meeting, additional time needs to be given to exchange of ideas and clarifications during the meeting. 2 minutes of public comment time at the very beginning of the meeting fails to provide this exchange of ideas. The committee needs to get their agenda items completed in a timely manner, but not at the price of no discussion. I propose at the end of each agenda item, the committee asks any present public for 1-minute public comments. This encourages more community participation and exchange of ideas in real time, avoiding many emails, conflicts, and disagreements. If serious conflicts or disagreements do occur, a meeting with the chair, the members, and the community members should be arranged. If a quorum of members is involved, then additional school committee meetings should be planned, advertised, and public input should be requested, as it has in the past regarding the contentious topic of masking.
Asked you to respond to how I would handle any disagreements between the school committee and the public. Look, that happens every day. Every decision we make has members of the public questioning that decision and how we came to it, whether we decide A or B. And so I think you can see how we've acted over or at least how I've acted over the last year I've been on the committee. I think that we are very open and honest and listen to what members of the public have to say, and we make our decisions based upon, that being a factor, but also based upon any number of other pieces of information we have available to us, over the last year and even before that, when, let's say, Ms. Hart stepped onto the committee just prior to COVID. It's been a pretty charged time for school committees, and I think that this conflict, as the question uses that term, has been pretty ever-present for us. And I think that we've demonstrated, at least I have, how I'm so willing to listen to and hear from members of the public regarding any number of issues that are before us as a school committee.
Well, if I were to disagree with anyone in the community, I certainly wouldn't quit. There have been many community members who have written to me, or to the superintendent, or to former chairs, who are not happy with the way I voted or something I said, and while they may have wanted to punch me in the face, like some wrote, I welcome disagreements between the committee and among members of the community. How else would we learn and grow? One purpose of our public meetings is to both listen to the community as well as demonstrate the reasoning behind our votes. In 2021, I authored the statement that the committee unanimously agreed to, which welcomed input from the community regardless of the topic and whether or not we agreed with it. Nationally, there had been a call from the National Association of School Boards to silence and label these parents who disagreed as domestic terrorists. Our committee wholeheartedly disagreed with the national body and said so, assuring you, our entire community, that they're welcome to tell us if we're wrong, if they think they're wrong, and that's what they believe. And they'll be safe while doing so. It's not possible that everyone from every community would agree with every decision made by the school committee, but that's why you vote. The committee has asked for, and I've encouraged as well, anyone to reach out with their feedback either through public comment sessions at the meetings, through email, or through social media. Whether we agree on everything is not the issue. It's the conversation we can have that really matters.
I think we have a wonderful record for handling conflicts with the community. If ever there were a time to prove ourselves, it was during COVID. Many of us had to put our personal opinions aside and vote for what the teachers and community felt was best. For example, I didn't think we should have ever done remote or hybrid. I was in favor of our superintendent's first choice, to return in the fall of 2020 to full-time school with social distancing. This sparked outrage from many stakeholders, so he amended it to a hybrid model with 1 week on, 1 week off. I enthusiastically supported this model as well, but it was followed by more upset, ultimately amended to the hybrid model we had to vote on. Knowing the alternative was full remote, I voted in favor of it. Did I disagree with the community? Yes, but the vote wasn't for me, it was for the towns. If there is upset or a conflict, I would hope that people would come to the members of the committee to seek help. We can let you know if it's under our purview, and if it's not, we can direct you to the person who can take care of it. We never pass it along, as once we are aware, we check in on the progress and make sure the conflict was resolved. We took this job with the intent to do right by our constituents. We cannot help when we don't know what the problem is. I would also like to add that kind emails, not those riddled with insults and accusations, are far better received. Which leads to this sincere request. If you have an issue that you would like resolved, airing it on social media does little to fix the problem. It only entices more upset while making the community lose faith in our schools. Please keep this in mind. Major stakeholders are paying attention, and they won't forget when budgetary requests come before the town. We haven't come across a situation in which curriculum materials or books have been challenged in our district. If that did occur, I expect that incoming Superintendent Costello would address those concerns and inform the school committee of her decision-making. It is not the purview of the school committee to get involved in the specifics of the curriculum in the schools. That is the purview of our teachers and administrators who we trust.
So the school committee has 3 areas it's responsible for: the budget, policy, and hiring and overseeing the superintendent. While we may review handbooks and courses of study and vote on policy that may impact curriculum materials, we don't really get into the business of micromanaging teachers and staff. Teachers should be free to design lessons as they see fit based on their years of professional training and tailoring them to their community's wants and needs. That said, a lot has been made recently at a national and local level of certain activists trying to push certain agendas on children through the guise of education, either through promoting or banning certain materials. And our community is not immune from this. If a community member has a concern about a book or curriculum material, it's recommended that they first seek an answer through the correct channels, starting with the teacher. If it does rise to an item before the committee, we could address it through our oversight role of the superintendent, as happened earlier this year with certain racist content being encouraged at Tohoto.
The book or curriculum should be reviewed by the district's teachers at that grade level to see if age and subject appropriate. Then the superintendent and the assistant superintendent and the principal should review the material under question along with the recommendations of the staff. Only after this process has been followed should it come before the school committee. The school committee should be presented with the teacher's recommendations, the principal's, and finally assistant superintendent and superintendent's recommendations. If there is dissent in the staff's recommendations, then the school committee should review the material as well. The challenger of the material should have an opportunity to present their concerns and the data to support their concerns during the public comment portion of the meeting. If the public involvement is great, then a special meeting needs to be scheduled and held to provide community feedback. Ultimately, if the community demands, it could go to a vote. However, eliminating a book or curriculum is not a process that should be taken lightly and should be considered with history in mind.
We were asked 2 somewhat politically charged questions here, one around specific books and curriculum materials, and if they are challenged in the district, what is our role and what is our process for responding to one of those challenges. Second question here, question number 8 being, what's my individual stance on alleged increased efforts in the U.S. to ban books in schools? Look, I think these are questions that are hot topics in the public arena right now, especially at a national level. But I think at a local level, with respect to this school committee and this school district, we need to rely on the teachers and the administrators to make appropriate decisions as to what curriculum is appropriate, as well as what books should be included from a literary standpoint. You know, this idea that this is a new effort is not what I agree with. You know, I think there have been efforts to ban books going all the way back to George Orwell's 1984, or The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, or any other, Catcher in the Rye. Right? There's been many times over the years that there have been efforts to question whether books should be included within a public school curriculum. But I'm going to rely on Superintendent or incoming Superintendent Costello, as well as the teachers in the district, to select the appropriate material they need to teach the curriculum and to ensure that our children are graduating from the elementary schools and from Tohoto as eager learners and are being provided with a curriculum that is age appropriate and also meets the guidelines in the learning outcomes we hope to achieve.
Banning books in schools of all places is an incredibly and ridiculously terrible idea if you want to encourage learning. So is pushing inappropriate politically or sexually motivated books on young children to indoctrinate them to your agenda. While we're limited in the amount of resources we can provide in our school libraries, I trust the teachers and librarians to make the correct, age-appropriate decisions for our students. I would not be happy to learn that any book were banned because someone disagrees with the content and has an alternate opinion. I do not, however, think inappropriate books of a certain political or sexual nature should be encouraged to young children by teachers without parents' involvement. Why are books banned to begin with? I don't know. But teaching about why the thought police are bad does not rise to the same level as teaching 12-year-olds alternative methods to have sex, as seems to be the most content most often brought up in these conversations.
I believe in free speech. I think that banning books is a slippery slope towards censorship, and I am against it. However, books in our schools should be age appropriate, and parents should be informed on what books are assigned and available. We should be cautious around any books or materials that promote specific social agendas or are deemed to be sexually explicit.
As stated before, eliminating a book or curriculum is a process that should not be taken lightly. History that is ignored is history that will be repeated. Censorship, book banning, and book burning all happened in the first year of the Nazi government in 1933. Intolerance of diversity, whether it be ban the indigenous people's narrative or a book about a child with two mothers, is a step into the past, not the future. We can all have different political views without promoting hate or intolerance. Personally, as a Christian and a Sunday school teacher, I believe above all else, we should love one another. Reproductive health education is vital to our students' education. It was usually addressed in the 5th grade when puberty was imminent, and again in health class in high school, all from a scientific perspective focused on anatomy and the process of puberty. The 5th grade talk, historically speaking, could be opted out by parent permission. Parents are invited to be present during the talk, so more discussion could happen at home. I think this is a process that worked and allowed parents to be included in the dialogue.
I'm running for the school committee seat because I believe we need to look to the future and not relive the past. One of the more attractive qualities of moving to Berlin-Boylston is the school district. Despite our challenges, it still remains an attractive district in which to raise a family. I hope to work to improve upon an already solid foundation, but that's not to say we aren't seeing some cracks there. We're currently working on a 3-year district improvement plan to build off that last plan from our retiring superintendent and begin anew with the appointment of Carol Costello. Some candidates aren't as open-minded, however, and want to continue some of the failures of the past. Jessica is running in Boylston and has spoken during public comment at most of the recent meetings this year and since I've been on the committee. She has spoken nothing, however, about any of the real issues we need to address in this district. She's not spoken about budgets and underfunded classrooms. She's not spoken about low test scores. She's not spoken about any building maintenance concerns. She's not spoken about the safety concerns or when our community came together this past spring after the unfortunate events in Uvalde to discuss what we can do to improve the safety in our schools. Jessica cares about one thing, and that's putting masks on children because of COVID and closing schools around vacation times. She's told us multiple times how she's dismissed her child each day for lunch so she does not have to eat around other children and wants us to require outside lunches too. In February, Jessica has told us as recently as this past June she wants to require masks in schools in situations and that she does not think you have a right as a parent to choose. She wants to cancel field trips and derides the committee for not adopting forced masking. She says the emotional toil of your child doesn't outweigh the mask mandate, and public safety and health do not outweigh your personal freedom. After all, this is Massachusetts and not Texas, as she likes to remind us. Let's not think for a minute that if Jessica were on the committee, she'd not be for pushing masks on your children and closing schools around different vacation periods, because she's worried about her child and not thinking about all of these social and emotional stress and loss of learning that these actions caused over the past 2 years. But we now have the data that shows just how severe the learning loss is, in some cases setting reading skills back 3 decades. Last year's AIMSweb data shows that in every elementary class in our towns, at least a third, if not more, are not meeting the grade level standard for literacy. In 5th grade, it was 80% not meeting it. In 2020, when they first closed schools, those 5th graders were 3rd graders, and there are national studies that show that if a child's not reading at grade level by the end of 3rd grade, their chances of graduating on time significantly drop. We have a crisis on our hands, and we need to turn it around now. This is one reason I decided to vote to appoint Carol Costello as the next superintendent. We can't afford to waste this year looking for someone who may or may not be as qualified. And by committing to Carol now, we give her an advantage to start this important work today, not next year as we would with an outside hire who first has to get up to speed and overcome a learning curve in a new district. Carol's ready now, and we needed her yesterday. So while I would appreciate your vote on November 8th, I'm also urging you to vote for Lori Hart and Adam Wilbur, because our children cannot afford someone like Jessica who's only concerned with one thing. We need to be focused on the future and getting our kids back to the education they deserve. We need to focus on hiring the best new principals, approving a budget that makes sense, and then working with the towns to make it happen, so we can provide the schools with the resources they need. We don't need someone who just wants to bully you about masks and isn't concerned with the real issues we face now. Thanks for your vote, and please consider voting for Lori Hart and Adam Wilbur as well. Thank you.
I am Jessica Moore Degley Alberti. I am the only person running against any incumbent school committee member. Boylston is my home and the home of my family. Our journey in the district has just begun with a kindergartner and a 4th grader. I am passionate about my family and my friends and all the students in the district. They are the friends of my children, the children of my friends, the children on my soccer team, and I care for them deeply. We've all suffered during the pandemic, be it mentally and emotionally, physically, educationally, or financially. We have all had to make sacrifices to make things work for our children. All the members of the school committee joined the committee to try to do the best thing for their children. All the members had different ideas of what that entailed and how it was to be done. Some did it respectfully, some did not. There were times when I was angry for my daughter who was emotionally hurt by the time she missed in school when she got COVID. Angry that members of the committee refused to notify people of COVID exposures, notifications that can change behavior that will ultimately decrease the spread of COVID in our schools and miss time on learning. As a nurse, I advocated for policies to keep kids in school, learning with their peers. The Mass Commissioner of Education, Jeff Riley, reported on the fact that there was record-breaking levels of absenteeism in the state's public schools last year, with nearly a third of all students missing 18 or more days of school. There must be middle ground to keep our kids in school and learning. Vaccines and masks do work to decrease spread, but I do not have any desire to pursue a mask or vaccine mandate. Home and hospital tutoring may be able to answer to this, but I believe maintaining the district COVID dashboard weekly is also part of the answer. During meetings, I have witnessed intolerance to different views, profanity, teachers' efforts insulted, and antagonizing comments made towards the superintendent. I have seen decisions, policies, and amendments to be made without the stakeholders in the community and the schools addressed. But I've also seen some members conduct themselves with respect and treat others with respect. We need more of this in our district. We have amazing teachers and staff that we need to include in our decision making so our children can come to benefit from their knowledge. Stable environments make less anxious children, which in turn allows them to learn more. Livable wages for paraprofessionals is also key to helping our children regain the lost learning time and build a firm foundation. Building a curriculum and environment to support healthy mental health is also key to supporting our children to be the best they can be. Diversifying clubs, maintaining the arts, diversifying the curriculum, maintaining a physical, healthy environment, and supporting physical exercise at all educational levels will also help us build a district that supports all students and their mental health, a goal that will help us retain more students into high school years. We're all tired of looking back. We need to look to the future, a future with more transparency, more exchange of ideas. My hope is to listen to the parents, teachers, staff, and students so they can focus on teaching and learning. The safety of our students and staff in our schools is also paramount. I believe we need different perspectives to create a healthy school committee. My hope is to give the district a new balanced perspective when serving. I ask your support in electing me, Jessica Moore Degley Alberti, to one of the 4-year Boylston positions on the new regional school committee. Thank you.
In conclusion, I'm asking for your vote. I've been interested in serving on the school committee for long before this election. I probably am the resident in town who peppered the previous members of the committee more than anybody about the need to hold this election and give our residents an opportunity to weigh in on who they want to represent them within the school district. I want to express my strong endorsement for Lori Hart as the other candidate in the race for the 4-year seats for Boylston residents. Obviously, members of Berlin and Boylston have the opportunity to vote for all 6 seats, but I want to strongly endorse Ms. Hart and hope you'll consider learning more about both her positions and mine at our joint website, www.votehartwilbur.com. Look forward to having the opportunity to continuing to serve our school district over the next 4 years as we work with Superintendent Costello to bring it to even greater heights. So thank you very much. VoteHartWilbur.com, and don't forget to vote on November 8th.
Out of respect for the time people have taken to watch this forum, as well as feeling that I've said everything that needs to be said, I will keep this brief. I have been on 2 versions of the school committee, and I have enjoyed my time on both. It has given me a vantage point that few others have. There have been public hints of acrimony amongst the school committee members on social media, and sadly in the local paper by another candidate. This is patently false. Despite having different viewpoints, backgrounds, and personalities, the current school committee works collaboratively. We listen respectfully to dissenting viewpoints, and sometimes change our own as well. Our relationship has allowed us to achieve some major milestones: the lifting of masking in February of 2022, the ratification of the teacher contract with considerable raises that keeps us competitive with neighboring districts while increasing parent-teacher interactions, and the appointment of a highly qualified internal candidate for our future superintendent. The school committee is in its groove. We are moving forward and we have big plans. While I admire the courage of a Boylston resident who has spoken at almost every meeting regarding her disagreement with the leniency of every policy we've enacted for COVID, we moved past that months ago and have serious work to do, none of it relating to an illness currently on par with the flu. I ask that you vote Lori Hart and Adam Wilbur for school committee. We have worked tirelessly to make positive change in our district, and we are just getting started.
We would like to thank the candidates that participated in this forum. For detailed information regarding your town's mail-in and in-person voting for the upcoming election, please contact your specific town clerk. Thank you for watching.
Perfect.